There comes a point in your life when the storms you once feared begin to fear you. When the people who once wounded you lose their power, not because they changed, but because you finally awaken to who you are. Tonight, you make a quiet promise to yourself. Nothing and nobody will ever hurt you again. Not because the world becomes kinder, but because you rise above it. You stop chasing explanations. You stop defending your heart to those who never deserved its access. You walk forward with a steady mind, a guarded spirit, and a strength that refuses to bend. This is the moment you reclaim your peace, and the moment the world realizes it can no longer break you. The quiet decision that changes everything. There is a strange kind of power hidden inside quiet decisions. The kind made not in anger, not in fear, but in a calm moment when your soul finally speaks louder than the noise around you. It happens after years of bending, shrinking, apologizing for taking up space, and convincing yourself that loyalty will eventually be recognized. It happens after you've spent far too long giving people the benefit of the doubt while they handed you the burden of their inconsistencies. But one day, without warning, something inside you shifts. Not with drama, not with a storm. Just a soft tightening in your chest, a clarity in your mind, a whisper that says, enough. This moment is not loud, yet it changes the entire direction of your life. You stop waiting for people to treat you the way you treat them. You stop hoping someone will wake up and suddenly understand the depth of your heart. You stop bargaining for respect. You stop pleading for honesty. You stop shrinking yourself just to maintain peace. And the moment you make that quiet decision, truly make it, the world around you begins to rearrange itself. Because this time, it is not a temporary reaction. It is not an emotional outburst. This time, it is a shift in identity. You begin to see everything with new eyes. You start noticing the weight you were carrying for others. You feel the heaviness of responsibility that was never yours. You realize how often you let your kindness become a gateway for people who never intended to protect it. And instead of breaking over these realizations, you begin to build. You build boundaries where there were none. You build silence where you once explained endlessly. You build distance where you once begged for closeness. You build inner strength where you once absorbed pain. This decision does not turn you cold. It turns you wise. It does not make you unkind. It makes you selective. You do not stop caring. You stop sacrificing your spirit for those who do not value it. This decision becomes the line between your old life and the life you are about to create. Suddenly, you no longer tolerate words that dismiss your worth. You no longer chase people who keep walking away. You no longer seek validation from those who cannot even validate themselves. Your peace becomes your priority. Your energy becomes your currency. Your time becomes sacred. You start protecting what you use to give away freely. And this shift is not loud enough for the world to celebrate, but it is powerful enough for the future to feel it. Because when you choose yourself, not in selfishness, but in survival, your entire destiny changes direction. The old version of you, the one who tolerated too much for too long, begins to fade, and the version rising in its place, that version is unshakable, calm, discerning, steady, the kind of person who walks into a room with quiet strength that no one can ignore. The kind of person who does not beg for loyalty because they embody it. The kind of person who is not afraid of being alone because solitude is now a sanctuary, not a punishment. And from this moment forward, nothing and nobody will ever hurt you the way they once did. Not because people change, but because you finally understood your worth and you decided to live like it. The power of walking away without noise. There is a profound strength in the kind of silence that follows a decision to walk away. Not the silence of defeat, not the silence of fear, but the silence of someone who has finally outgrown the chaos that once held them. It is a silence that carries truth, dignity, and a finality that words can never deliver. People expect storms when you leave. They expect shouting, explanations, and long emotional speeches. They expect drama, justification, and the chance to defend themselves. But the most powerful exit you will ever make is the one without noise, because quiet departures echo the loudest. You don't warn anyone. You don't announce your pain. You don't ask for clarity from those who never gave it. You simply step back, step out and step away. And in doing so, you reclaim something far more valuable than their approval. You reclaim yourself. Walking away without noise means you have reached a stage where you no longer seek to be understood by those who refuse to understand you. You no longer negotiate your boundaries. You no longer try to prove your worth to those who could not even see it. You no longer waste fragments of your soul explaining the same hurt to people who keep repeating the same behavior. You choose silence because silence is dignity. Silence is strength. Silence is closure without needing permission. And this kind of exit hits deeper than any confrontation because it says, I finally see the truth, and it no longer controls me. It is the moment you stop giving your energy to situations designed to drain you. It is the moment you stop offering compassion to people who used it as an advantage. It is the moment you stop pouring love into places that only reflected your kindness back as disappointment. This walk is not taken out of anger. It is taken out of awakening. You finally recognize that your peace is worth more than any relationship built on inconsistency. You understand that any connection requiring you to lose yourself is not a connection, it is captivity. And when you walk away without noise, you shatter that captivity. You choose freedom over familiarity. You choose healing over habit. You choose growth over guilt. You choose yourself over the comfort of what once hurt you. And people will feel that silence. They will feel the absence of your energy. They will feel the void created when your loyalty is no longer available. Some will be confused, some will be shocked, some will pretend not to care, but every single one of them will notice, because the departure of someone with a sincere heart is always noticed. But remember, you did not leave to be missed. You left to be free. Your exit is not an invitation for pursuit. It is a declaration that your spirit is no longer open to disrespect. And as you walk away, something unbelievable happens. The path ahead becomes clearer than ever before. You begin to see opportunities you once overlooked because you were too busy fixing things that were not yours to fix. You begin to rebuild the confidence that was slowly eaten away by stress. You begin to rediscover parts of yourself that were buried under emotional exhaustion. You start to feel lighter, stronger, wiser, and in that silence, your new, powerful silence, you realize the truth. Walking away was not losing. It was saving yourself. It was protecting your future. It was choosing a life where your peace is permanent, not conditional. And from this moment onward, you walk differently, not out of pride, but out of a deep understanding that you will never again remain in spaces that force you to abandon yourself. This is the quiet strength that changes everything. Reclaiming your inner territory. There comes a moment in life when you realize that the greatest battles were never fought on the outside. They were fought within the borders of your own mind, your own heart, your own identity. You start to understand that the world did not wound you alone. It was the permission you unknowingly granted that allowed certain people to walk into your inner world without respect for its walls. Reclaiming your inner territory begins the day you finally see the truth. Your peace was not taken. It was handed over piece by piece through years of over-giving, over-explaining, and over-trusting. You didn't lose yourself suddenly. You lost yourself slowly. You lost yourself every time you stayed silent when you should have spoken. You lost yourself every time you pretended you were fine just to keep someone else comfortable. You lost yourself every time you allowed someone's inconsistency to become normal and someone's emotional distance to become acceptable. But there is a point where this pattern ends, not with anger, not with chaos, but with clarity, a calm clarity that whispers, "This is not who I am anymore." And from that moment, the rebuild begins. Reclaiming your inner territory is not about becoming hard, it is about becoming whole. It is not about shutting people out, it is about becoming highly selective about who gets access to your emotional landscape. You start clearing the debris left behind by disappointments. You start pulling out the roots of self-doubt that grew from the opinions of others. You start rebuilding your sense of worth, not as something negotiable, but as something sacred. You reinforce the boundaries you once let slide. You begin to take back what you once allowed others to weaken, your confidence, your attention, your emotional bandwidth. You stop tolerating conversations that drain you. You stop entertaining people who treat you like a backup plan. You stop absorbing the stress of individuals who refuse to fix themselves. Instead, you choose something rare, inner order. This reclamation is not visible to the world. It is a private process, an inner restructuring, a silent renovation of the spirit. You learn to sit with yourself, to hear your thoughts without fear, to face your wounds without avoiding them, to honor your emotions instead of burying them. Slowly, the chaos quiets, the noise fades, the inner fog lifts, and for the first time in a long time, you begin to feel present within yourself again. You realize you can breathe without worrying who is watching. You realize you can rest without feeling guilty. You realize you no longer need to explain your healing to people who contributed to your wounds. You start living for yourself with a steadiness that does not require applause. Reclaiming your inner territory also means understanding that not everyone gets a second entrance. Some people are kept outside the gates, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. You've seen the cost of giving the wrong people access to your inner world, and you refuse to repeat that lesson. You become more protective of your time, your energy, your peace. You stop being available to everyone. You stop being predictable. You stop being an open book. Instead, you become intentional. You choose who gets to know your fears, your dreams, your insecurities, your joys. That level of intimacy is no longer handed out, it is earned. And as your inner territory is restored, something extraordinary happens. The world no longer has the same power over you. People may still try to provoke you, but your emotions are no longer accessible. Stress may try to enter, but it finds the gates closed. Manipulation may knock, but there is no doorway anymore. You become grounded, centered, anchored in yourself. And from this place of inner sovereignty, you finally understand the truth. When you reclaim your inner world, nobody can shape your reality without your permission. This is the turning point where you stop surviving and start living. This is where your peace becomes non-negotiable. This is where you rise. Mastering the art of emotional distance. There is a rare kind of power in learning how to step back. Not out of fear, not out of weakness, but out of a deep understanding that not everyone deserves the gift of your emotional presence. Mastering emotional distance is not about being cold, it is about being conscious. It is the ability to observe without absorbing, to listen without reacting, to care without losing yourself in the process. For years, you may have responded to every tone, every mood, every shift in someone else's behavior, believing it was your responsibility to fix what was never yours. You may have carried the weight of words that were not meant for you, internalized the pain of people who refused to heal themselves, and interpreted silence as something personal. But you reach a stage in life where you finally understand. Not every interaction deserves an emotional investment. Not every situation needs your heart. Not every person has earned the privilege of affecting how you feel. And when this realization settles into your bones, your entire world becomes clearer. Emotional distance does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop crumbling. It means you choose your responses with intention instead of impulse. It means you refuse to let someone's temporary chaos become your permanent burden. You start to see patterns you once missed. You start to recognize when someone is trying to provoke a reaction. You begin to notice when someone is manipulating your empathy. And instead of reacting the way you once did, with urgency, with fear, with guilt, you breathe, you step back, and you give yourself permission to stay centered. This is where your power lies, because emotional distance is not pure detachment. It is disciplined compassion. It is the understanding that your heart can remain warm while your boundaries stay firm. When you master emotional distance, you no longer explain yourself endlessly. You no longer defend your character to people who misinterpret you on purpose. You no longer rush to solve problems created by someone else's lack of clarity. Instead, you choose silence over unnecessary conflict. You choose patience over confrontation. You choose self-control over emotional chaos. And those choices are not signs of weakness. They are signs of mastery. Because reacting instantly is easy, staying composed is strength. Anyone can explode out of frustration. Very few can stay steady in the storm, and emotional distance makes you steady, unshakable even in the presence of those who once knew exactly how to destabilize you. This distance also gives you room to think, to breathe, to process without pressure. Instead of drowning in someone else's emotions, you begin to anchor yourself in your own truth. You no longer feel the need to match someone's intensity. You no longer feel obligated to participate in every argument presented to you. Sometimes the highest form of intelligence is withdrawal. Sometimes the greatest form of clarity comes from silence. And sometimes the most impactful move you can make is to let your calmness speak in places where noise once ruled. Over time, emotional distance transforms not just your relationships, but your entire identity. You become someone who cannot be easily manipulated, triggered, or controlled. People who once fed off your reactions will find nothing to consume. People who once thrived on your emotional availability will feel the shift. Some may pull away, some may criticize your new boundaries, some may misunderstand the calmness you've earned. But that is no longer your concern, because the moment you learn to manage your emotions instead of handing them over to others, you become untouchable in a way that is gentle yet undeniable. And as this new version of you rises, you begin to attract a different kind of energy. People who value peace, who respect boundaries, who speak honestly, who do not demand emotional labor as proof of loyalty. Your world becomes quieter, but stronger, smaller, but truer. And in this new stillness, you finally understand. Emotional distance was never about losing connection. It was about choosing the right connections. It was about protecting your heart without hardening it. It was about giving the best of you only to those who honor it. That is the art. That is the mastery. Becoming untouchable through self-respect. There is a moment in every person's journey when self-respect becomes more than a concept. It becomes a life principle, a guiding force, a shield that transforms everything it touches. Becoming untouchable is not about building walls. It is about raising your standards so high that anything unworthy simply cannot reach you. It is the moment you decide that your time, your heart, your presence, and your peace are not for casual handling. You've spent years giving the best parts of yourself to people who were not prepared to hold them with care. You've offered kindness to those who mistook it for weakness, loyalty to those who saw it as convenience, and patience to those who took it for granted. But there comes a turning point where you no longer feel the need to prove your worth, because you finally recognize that your worth was never in question. Only your boundaries were. And once you correct that, everything changes. Self-respect begins quietly, the same way dawn begins before the light appears. It begins with small decisions. You say no when you used to say yes out of obligation. You walk away from conversations that drain you. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You choose distance instead of defending yourself. These may seem like subtle shifts, but each one is a declaration. I value myself now. And the more you make these choices, the stronger you become, not in an aggressive way, but in a grounded, dignified way. You stop bending your values just to keep someone in your life. You stop shrinking your personality to make others comfortable. You stop accepting half effort from people who want full access to your energy. You begin to treat yourself with the same care you once desperately wished others would offer you. And as your self-respect grows, your tolerance shrinks. Situations you once justified now look unacceptable. Behaviors you once tolerated now reveal their true cost. You no longer feel guilty for protecting your peace because you understand that peace is not a luxury, it is a necessity. You begin to see that anyone who tries to make you feel guilty for taking care of yourself was benefiting from your neglect, and that realization becomes a powerful filter. People who were only there for what you provided naturally fall away. People who appreciated you but never valued you will feel the shift and either rise to meet you or fade into the background. But the ones who truly respect you, the ones who see your soul, not just your usefulness, will stay without being asked. You no longer chase, beg, or negotiate for a place in anyone's life. You become someone whose presence is earned, not taken for granted. This transformation affects every area of your life. You communicate differently, calm, clear, firm. You love differently, with honesty but without losing yourself. You choose differently, guided by your intuition rather than your wounds. Opportunities appear that once seemed distant because your energy now aligns with your value. Even the world looks different when viewed through the lens of self-respect, safer, clearer, more peaceful. And this new version of you becomes untouchable, not because you are unreachable, but because you no longer allow harm to enter your life unnoticed. You no longer tolerate emotional imbalance. You no longer entertain inconsistency disguised as affection. You no longer allow access to those who do not come with sincerity. Becoming untouchable is not the end of your journey. It is the beginning of a new one. It is the moment you finally meet the version of yourself you were always meant to become. Someone strong yet gentle, firm yet compassionate, present yet protected. Someone who does not crumble under pressure but stands tall through clarity. Someone who will never again confuse being needed with being valued. And from this place of deep self-respect, the world cannot hurt you the way it once did. Because the gates around your spirit are no longer built from fear, they are built from wisdom. And nothing and nobody can break what you have rebuilt with truth, patience, and strength.